Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. I'm just waiting a few moments here. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here, Mr. Brad Porter. I'm zooming in on the screen because I don't really need to see myself a lot. I just need to see that you are there watching. I need to see your comments. So hello. There appear to be perhaps 18 people sort of jumping up by the moment. So this is a Q&A session for the subscribers to my Patreon page. And the way that you ask a question, you are, in all likelihood, you are either watching on YouTube or you are watching on Facebook. And all you need to do is type your question. Hello from Amy's mom, Jane Cosma. Hello. All you have to do is type your question into the comments, and I will see it over here on this little part of my screen. There is another thing that you can do, which is you can, if you're watching on Facebook, by all means hit share with something like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe it. Peter Mulvey is doing a question and answer." Or perhaps you could just be a little more straight on. Peter Mulvey's doing a Q&A if you're a fan and would like to support him, sign up on his Patreon or whatever, or just share it. I've already said all this in the description of this event. But by all means, so you can hit share whether you are on Facebook or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you could just copy the link for the YouTube feed and share it. But I'm here to spend a little bit of time with you, perhaps take requests and answer your questions. So by all means, just type a question into the chat window, and with any luck, I will see it. At this point, I am not seeing any questions, just the two hellos, or one hello and one thank you. Hi, Peter. Good to see you. Good to see you, Margaret. Hello. Any chance the album shirt will be released on vinyl? That's an easy one. The answer to that is yes at some point. The record that shirt first appeared on is called Kitchen Radio. And I pretty much intend to, little by little, release absolutely all of my records on vinyl. I have a brand new record coming out in August. It is called Love is the Only Thing. And it is at this point on, the vinyl is in production. Vinyl is like horrifyingly backed up with supply chains and all that. So honestly, I should probably just get the ball rolling on like record after record after record, because especially I feel like Kitchen Radio is a record people really dig. At some point, I should put Rapture out on vinyl. Yeah, pretty much all my old records. So the answer to that question is yes. Perhaps even this year, Kitchen Radio does seem like the next logical one to do. I'm also always happy to take suggestions on that. You can just go over to any sort of social media post and hijack it. Oh, that's an interesting question. How far from an experience do you have to be to write about it satisfyingly? Or do you work best when you're in the midst of something? That is very much a moving target. Okay, I'm going to have to put my glasses on because I need to zoom back out so that I can see the part of the screen where I can. Um, so this is what I'll do. Instead of a chat overlay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring up the question from Emma Sloniker. How far from an experience do you have to be to write about it satisfyingly? That's really a moving target. So I went through a real turbulent, fairly delaminating time right about 2009, and I remember my buddy Jeff Folcall um, saying like, "Oh, you got to write. You got to write. You know, this is the time." But honestly, I at the time my instinct told me not to, and generally I move with instinct. And my instinct at the time kind of just said, look, put your hooks in the water and get through what you're getting through. And so that became the record, Silver Ladder. But Silver Ladder, as I recall, came out in maybe 2014. So it actually took a fair amount of time. Having said that, during the pandemic, I just wrote as I went about everything, about the loneliness that we were all experiencing. And I think what's at stake here is, okay, this is it. I'm glad you asked this question. What it is that during the pandemic and during the autocratic slide, I was having my own particular reactions to it, but I was also keenly aware that everybody else was going through it. And so it just felt natural to write about it as we went, because I felt that I was communally feeling my way. Whereas when I go through a personal upheaval, I think it might take a bit more time. Obviously everybody, I have been divorced. I have lost good friends. I have been remarried. I've been through the things, just the boilerplate things that human beings go through. But when it's me, every person I think has this instinct that they are going through something that no one else can quite understand. And I think like everybody else, I have that feeling. And so I think it takes a bit more time. The end goal is the exact same thing, which is to make an attempt to make the particular into something universal. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you, Kate, for the compliment. Dublin. Neil Morgan. Dublin. Any hope of seeing you this side of the pond anytime soon? Alas, it will not happen this year, and it may not happen next year. I have an infant son. I got a brand new kiddo. And so the priority really is to stay as close to home as possible, We're doing our level best to give this tiny hominid, what they call secure attachment. And we figured the way to do that is to take advantage of the fact that both my wife and I have somewhat flexible schedules, and we're really lucky that way. And so, so far in his life, I think he's been alive maybe 300 days, about 10 months old, and he has spent every single day either with mama or with papa or with mama and papa the whole day. And so alas, I probably am not going to get to Ireland until 2024. But I do intend to return. And in all honesty, return fairly often. One of the things I'd really like to do is perhaps take some real time there, or maybe even take a semester there, so that, the kid could spend a school year doing that and seeing another place. Okay, notes from elsewhere. Kitchen Radio or Notes from Elsewhere, either one of them is both of those are going to appear on vinyl, I would think, next. Kate Garrettson, come to Calgary. I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave about Ireland, which is I am unlikely to be breaking new territory soon. Like right now, my entire priority is to do as much work as I can. To do as much work as I can that is within like 200 miles of my house, 150 miles of my house, so that I can just drive the hell home that night, and be be up at 6 when the baby gets up. Have you spent any time with Tim lately? Yes, and not Timmy. He's referring to Tim Guerin, who is one of the greatest songwriters that this planet has to offer. He is, unlike me, he's not a touring artist. And so he lives in the Boston area. He just plays around the Boston area, and I mean it. Like, I would put him up there with, he's sort of like this rolling combination of perhaps it's fair to say Randy Newman, Tom Waits, and Mose Allison, and he works in sort of the blues and the Americana form. He's so good. But yes, I have spent time with him recently. I know that in late September, I'm going to be doing a gig with, it's myself, Timmy Guerin, Willie Porter, and Pamela Means. We're going to be at Stubblebine Luthery. It's not up on anybody's website yet, but Willie Porter and I bought a guitar together about 10 years ago, a 19th century Washburn that a luthier in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we lived at the time, a guy named Garrett Burton, had taken this 1898 Washburn and revived it, put a new bridge on it, classical strings, and turned it into this magic guitar that is full of songs. And so Willie and I would trade it off, and you cannot help but write a song on it. And then I bought Willie out of that guitar when I moved out east. And then Timmy, it lived in Timmy's house for some reason about 5 years ago, and Timmy wrote 1 million songs on it, and I just gave it to Pamela Means. So we're basically celebrating that guitar. We're doing it. The guitar is called the Black Crow, and we're going to spend it's like a festival. It's going to be the Black Crow Festival, where we essentially we just play songs on that guitar. Okay, so there's that question. Thank you for the question. I know you started out busking in the subway in Boston. How did that come about? Were you committed to being a professional musician at that point, or was it a result of the experience? That's a real good question. Here is what happened. In 1989, I would have been a sophomore in college before I moved to Boston, and I took a semester in Maynooth, which is outside of Dublin in Ireland. And I was a poor student because what I mostly did was cut classes. And I used to take the I believe it was the number 65 bus from Maynooth all the way into Dublin on a Friday afternoon. And I would hook up with the street musicians. The Waterboys record, Fisherman's Blues, had just come out. And so there was this sort of cadre of musicians that would just play Waterboys tunes and Peter Gabriel tunes. And I hung out with them, and I busked solo on my own. I met a guy named Leslie Key, and he and I worked out a version of American Pie and a version of Hurricane by Reuben Carter. I would have been maybe 19, 20 years old. I'd crash on somebody's couch, and I had made money and I made money and satisfying money, because this was before the euro, and so like the Irish coins were like heavy. I'd make like this sack of coins that amounted to maybe 40, 50 bucks, which is a lot when you're a 19-year-old. And that was it. Like, I got bit by the bug. I had all these transcendent experiences standing in the rain and playing music for strangers, and it's just a wild thing to do in your 20s. And I remember we were playing Biko by Peter Gabriel, and suddenly a bunch of skinheads just sort of like materialized out of the crowd, and they were chanting Sieg Heil, spitting beer on us, and it was a pretty stressful thing. And then a bunch of thick-necked Irish cops sort of materialized, it's like, with their arms folded, get the fuck out, move the fuck on, and those guys, nobody has a gun there. It's a thing that we call civilization. And God, I remember that. And I remember taking the bus home on a Sunday to pretend that I was going to classes on a Monday. Um, and I remember a woman in a hijab and some, again, he wasn't a skinhead, but he was just like your basic sort of towny Irish dude in a tracksuit, just like saying the rudest, meanest shit to her. And she was crying softly and like trying to hold herself together. And and there's no one else on the bus. And I go, I remember just being like, well, then it's going to have to be me, and like going like, hey, buddy, can you just leave her alone? And he looked at me, he was very, very, very drunk. And he looked at me with just full on malice. It was terrifying. And he sort of staggered over to me. He might have been in his mid-20s. He's like, when you get off this fucking bus, I'm going to fucking kill you. And then he went upstairs, and I'm shitting my pants, like I'm okay. So now I'm going to die here because I'm not a fighter. I'm not good at this. But then this old hippie dude in a German army coat from the back of the bus, he like walked up and was like, hey man, I'll get off the bus when you get off the bus. You too, young woman, a young lady, we'll figure this out. He's probably asleep up there. And that was the case. So like I had associated music and just decency and adventure and employment as a given thing by the time I was like 19 or 20 years old. These things got welded into me. And so when I moved to Boston in 1992, it was kind of a no-brainer just to go down in the subway. Like, I remember I did some temp jobs and stuff, and then like, in the subway I could make $100 in a day, especially because by then I actually had a CD, and people would buy the CD, and I remember that the woman who sort of ran the temp agency happened to live in the neighborhood I lived in, and she came down the escalator, and she saw me with my guitar case open singing, and she was like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize things were so desperate. Like I can find you a temp job." And I was like, "No, I'm making 3 times as much an hour down here in the subway. I'm doing great. I really appreciate that." And that's how I paid my rent for 3 years. And again, I encountered people. The other thing was, yes, of course, I intended to be a professional musician. And the way you did it on the folk scene was that you did like open mics and open mic features. And if I'm going to be crass here, I was just better than most of the people doing that because I was playing 6 hours a day. Like I wasn't, and I was playing 6 hours a day to make a living. Like my motivation was that I needed to make rent. And so like I wasn't practicing at home and then going and just playing 10 minutes in front of people at an open mic. Like I was playing days and days and days in front of people, and the stakes were my making rent. And so there were a bunch of that just made me better at the thing. And I would walk into an open mic and really just be more comfortable on stage and have better songs. And much more importantly, just have, through the raw repetition of it, I would know what it is to just do the thing I'm doing right now, which is to like assume that you want to hear what it is I have to say and say it, articulate it out there, either musically or or colloquially. And then the other thing was I would go to these open mic features, and I built my mailing list not just from the folk scene, but I built it from the commuters, which is a broader subset of people. And so I always sort of outdrew everybody, like I sort of had this hybrid career. So that's basically how, busking was the basis of everything, like that's how I built this. And in some ways, I think that's been, again, that got welded into me. Like I just get out there and play for people. And, I remember I did my first Kickstarter and it was immensely successful. I'm sure, of the few dozen of you that are watching right now, I am sure that plenty of you have pledged to one of my Kickstarters. But like Kickstarter was new, and like music industry journalists would like write to me and be like, what do what's your secret for social media penetration and return? And I was like, step one, play in rooms for people for 25 years and take it seriously. Not just that they spent money to see you play, but they got a sitter, like they could have been somewhere else and they're here, and value that. And that's step one, those 25 years. And step two is like launch a Kickstarter. I don't know what else to tell you, Greetings from Falcon Ridge. Greetings from Falcon Ridge. Oh, thank you. Hello. Hello to you. God, it's been a while since I played Falcon Ridge. Vicky, I just saw you. How do you feel about using the same word repeatedly in a song? For example, this past month's prompt of rain, how many times is it okay to use that word in a song? Okay, that cuts in two directions. Rain is, of course, a cliche, so it can be overused in a song. And in fact, I wrote, with Timmy, I wrote that tune, oh, those kids down in the square, they're dancing like they just don't care. They know it all washes away in the morning rain. And when we were writing it, Timmy, who's a better songwriter than I am and has written even more songs than I have, as soon as the word rain came up, I think it was me that put that word. He was like, you gotta earn rain. Jury's out. This better be a real good song. And then maybe we will have earned sticking rain into a song. Having said that, I got that one, what if you were, 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 you were the only one. You are the only one. And it just sort of goes on that cryptic level for a while. And then the bridge of that song is heavy rain, freezing rain, winter rain, summer rain, heavy rain, freezing rain, winter rain, summer rain, rain on the rooftops, rain on a tall pine. And so again, like the word rain appears like 28 times only in the bridge, but it is meant at that point to almost lose its meaning and become sort of a hypnotic thing. So there is no real answer to your question. There are only the particulars. I think of like, oh my God, that amazing Anais Mitchell song, The Shepherd. And there's the fields of yellow hay, and the shepherd is going to and from the yellow barn. Like yellow just appears over and over, the way that folk songs used to do that. The old classical bards that were writing sort of the real deal folk songs from the English countryside a million years ago. That was a trade, and it was a mystic trade, and a given color meant a given thing. And so if you look at the old child ballads, the sort of historical stuff, you will see this weird repetition almost as a form of internal rhyme and structure. And it was meant as not just an evocation, but an invocation. So and the jury's kind of out. And then in the very end, I'm just going to go with the Duke Ellington thing. Like, there's two kinds of music, good music and bad music. Like, if it's a good song and it uses the word rain a lot, it's a good song. And if it's a good song because it uses the word rain very sparingly, it's a good song, I hope my non-answer has helped. Tell us about what you see as the brightest optimum in the youth with whom optimism in the youth with whom you interact. Oh, thank you. And you are a great bright light. Thank you. I appreciate that, Monica. The youth that I'm interacting the most with at this point is my son. And, babies are, it turns out, astonishing. They're amazing. They never lie. And they're sort of open and present all the time. They're also unrepentant sociopaths who don't care about you and, will abuse you the minute you do something they don't want. But they're magic. And then, I just was talking to someone considerably younger than me. She was interviewing me for her podcast. Cindy Howes is her name, and her podcast is called Basic Folk. It's part of the bluegrass situation. So she was interviewing me, and we were speaking about Sharon Salzberg. And I said, oh man, Sharon Salzberg is my spirit animal. And she kind of stopped the interview and she said, hey, listen, I'm going to edit this part out, but just, spirit animal that's like appropriationist and fairly disrespectful. And I said, you know what? You're right. And I actually kind of felt it as I heard myself say the words. Like, I don't have a spirit animal. I am not a Navajo person. And it's kind of not cool. I'm living at this particular moment on, native land. We all are if we're on this continent. And I'm like, it's fine that you leave it in, like, to give you another example, pronouns. I always mess up pronouns when I got someone who is a they, them in my sphere, and with my friends' kids who are trans, like I slip up all the time with their pronouns. Here's the thing. The fact that I have become a little bit clueless is a sign of progress. Like I get annoyed and frustrated that I skin my knees on the present, that I'm kind of bumbling around because I don't have, I don't quite understand how this newfangled stuff works. But unlike most people my age appear to get upset about this. I'm not upset. People are learning to speak to each other about their complexities and their nuances and to be respectful of those things. And I'm all for it. The fact that I'm a dinosaur and have a harder time getting it right is a sign of progress. If I were perfectly comfortable with the way the world is working, well, then the world wouldn't be progressing. I think that's kind of how I look at things. The youth are amazing. They're kinder than we are. And I think it's partly because we've done the work of trying to be present to them and understand them. So, more and more, when I was thinking of becoming a parent, my father-in-law he's a wonder. He's just a garrulous, hilarious dude. And he would text us out of the blue and he'd be like, you don't scream at broccoli to try to get it to turn into something else. You just water it and it becomes broccoli. And I there's a lot of wisdom in that. Like, I'm sure that the kids who wound up having to go fight World War II and stay in the closet if you were gay and like shoot Nazis and get shot at by Nazis and then come home and marry a woman who wasn't allowed to have a checkbook, and it was fine if you slapped your wife, I'm sure that they were actually open-hearted, beautiful, present children, and they just got fucking mangled by the 1940s. And if you go back further and further, it's a stone fact that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, someone among them, you have, I don't know how many of them you have, 256 of them? No doubt one of them stoned one of their children to death for something. Kids are great. Culture takes a while to catch up to that. And the more I think we can just let kids be who they are, the better off we're going to be. All right. Boop-a-doo. Huh. Good. Glad to be of use. Yeah, you don't have to, you never have to write. So much of this work is done for you. Oh my God. The subconscious, to have a subconscious is amazing. Wow. Black crows. Oh, that's hilarious. Do do chords have attached emotions the way that keys do? Do you have any example of happy versus sad versus suggestive chords that you can demonstrate? Excellent question. So yes, to an extent, obviously, major, minor, but it's not as simple as that. Like minor, sad, but adding a million in a drop dead soup. Just pink on a downtown train. Now that is not sad. That's like exciting, So it's chords. It's the combination of the chords and the rhythm, and then the way that you run towards something or away from something. Like, I love beautiful melodies telling us terrible things. That's the Tom Waits formulation for it. And then, I've always loved sort of like a little more richness in the meat of a chord, like, so not just buds or, things along those lines. And then this is just a thing that I find to be true. They all have their own colors. Like the chord C, is just a very warm, bright. It's like sunlight. And then D, is also warm and bright, but sort of greenish, if I'm being honest. And B flat is just the darkest of all the major chords. So B flat minor is awfully dark because minor tends to be darker than major. And then you get just sort of little things like, think of here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Not a great poem. But when you pair it with, first that indelible melody, and then when it's a G chord, which is a sort of a brightish, earthy chord, and then that, the D chord, but it's a D, and it's a rich D. It's got that major seventh in it. So now it's sort of greenish, and the major seventh is sweet. So we go from like bright, earthy, and then sort of bright, sweet green. And then that would be B of all chords. Is that B yet? Yeah. So it's B, but it's B with the flat 7, dominant. And so it's this sort of like completely different color tonality, B, and then B dominant, so it's bright, dark, and it's on the word sun. You have this, so here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo, here comes the sun. That, will knock you right off your chair, the way that it all sort of comes together. And, it's worth mentioning, I don't think that George Harrison was a theorist. I don't think he was terribly schooled in the technical sense. Like, I don't even know if he could tell you that was that about what he was doing, but it doesn't matter because he knew it on a bodily level and could just knock you flat with it. God, that is the most beautiful song. And it's the best example I can think of sort of attached emotion of chords. Holy smokes, right? Thank you for the question, Brad. We got Sagittarius with Mark Aureli. When are you guys going to make a live album together, complete with chatter in between? Damn great shows. Actually, we're plotting as we speak. Like those, first of all, those were so much fun. Like Mark and that was our second tour, and our first tour was 20 years on the nose again. We're going to do it again, but in all fairness, I think what we might try to do is find a third person. And, they'd have to be a bit of a unicorn. A third person who is a woman, so that we have that sort of, preferably an alto, so a woman with a voice that's slightly lower than Mark, who is like perhaps the most silver-tongued tenor I've ever met. But it also has to be a woman who's like a badass instrumentalist of some kind, like maybe banjo and fiddle, but some complementary set of instruments. And Mark's a drummer, and the way I play guitar, I'm effectively a bass player, and I would love to just make a project that was essentially a band. I'm always looking forward. Like I've done this in the past, but it was sort of a colloquial folk project called Redbird, and I loved it. And now, we've all kind of moved on to other things. We're all still friends, but I want to make like a band, like a kick-ass band, give it a name, and just sort of go out on the road with it. But Mark and I will be doing a lot more touring as we sort of try to find that person within the wider community. It's all about market domination, people. Boop. All right, I'm going to scroll. Okay. This is, so your useful alternative tunings is what got me back into picking up the guitar and reignited a love for it again. Thank you. Glad to be of use, man. What was it that got you into alternate tunings originally? Two guys got me into alternate tunings. Michael Hedges, magnificent musician. He was a composer who happened to be a guitar player, and he was a far out dude, like a serious weed smoking, coffee enema, ingesting, incense burning, kind of mandala creating, weirdo, wonderful dude, Michael Hedges from Oklahoma, and a fantastic composer, and his instrument was the guitar. And so he died in 97, very young, just absolutely offensively of a car crash. That was the year that everybody died. Luther Allison died that year. Townes Van Zandt kicked that year off by drinking himself to death. And it's like Townes opened the damn floodgates. I remember Michael Hutchence hanged himself, the guy from In Excess. And then like 2 days later, someone's like, dude, Michael Hedges died. And I was like, no, you mean Michael Hutchence? And the guy was like, no. Michael Hutchence died 2 days ago, and Michael Hedges died today. And that just went on. But my God, get his records. Aerial Boundaries is the big record. And then the other guy was Leo Kottke, who was much more inside baseball in terms of guitar. Like he was a disciple, and he's still on the road and playing, and a wonderful musician. Leo Kottke was sort of like open C, open G, 12-string guitar, rooted in the more esoteric. His sort of like model was a dude named John Fahey. But Leo, despite seeming to be a little bit more boilerplate Americana, like Leo Kottke's great big tune is, his big tune was The Fisherman. But Leo is deceptively weird in his own right. And so that's what got me into alternate tunings, and that's where I worked forever. But honestly, I work a lot more these days in standard tuning. I kind of crawled in through the pantry window of guitar playing with the alternate tunings, and then like I made my way to the front door and the living room. So I'll take it. Greetings, the Reverend Robin Bacon Hoffman. How is it that Knuckleball Sweet feels like happy in a bottle? I mean, because it kind of is, because it was a happy accident of a song. I was just doing a song swap with my friends in a basement somewhere, a hootenanny after a gig, and there was a killer mandolin player, Sean Staples, in the room, and I went, she got everything she needs. She's an artist, don't look back. She got everything she needs. She's an artist, she don't look back. She can take the dark out of the daytime. She can play the nighttime lick. So I wanted to do that Dylan tune, She Belongs to Me, but I wanted to give it that 6/8 feel. And from there, like, I was like, well, hell, that's so different from Dylan's version that I'll change the melody a little and write my own verses. So I wrote my own verses. We recorded it in C. And honestly, I think what makes it happy in a bottle is that, I had a great bass player on the recording and a great electric guitar player on the recording and a great drummer, but I don't play quartet. I play solo almost all the time. And so I put it into the key of A, and that allowed it in this weird ass tuning that allowed it to just have this huge dynamic opening up. So that's the technical answer to the question. I hope also it's because it's about my, spiritual home, the Cafe Carp, and that just always makes me happy. John Rodriguez, hello, Peter. I registered as a writer/publisher with ASCAP and saw that one could perform set lists for royalty payment, which is pretty small. Do I do that? I mean, I did for a while, but honestly, like, I have become cynical about that for this reason. Like, ASCAP, if someone plays my song on the radio, ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, of whom I am a member, they go out and they browbeat the large radio stations to give them money that they then distribute through modeling to us artists. And, in fairness, if you got a band that's playing Beatles tunes and Van Morrison tunes and, all that stuff in your bar, and people are coming because they like that band and they like to hear songs that they know, I get it that Van Morrison wants you to give him some of the money that you're making off the alcohol from the people who wouldn't be in your bar unless there were those covers playing. So I get covers and I get jukeboxes. But, I don't actually like that Club Passim has to pay ASCAP. I don't like it. And I feel that when I submit my set list, it makes them more prone to go in and browbeat Passim. Here's the thing. If Passim's business model was to play Peter Mulvey songs, like to have everyone in there play Peter Mulvey songs, and only Peter Mulvey songs, and they played only Peter Mulvey songs on the stereo, and they charged a cover, and they made money, and I would want some of that money. But Peter Mulvey songs don't get played in Passim until I'm playing them, by and large. In other words, nobody's exploiting me. I'm already getting paid when I play at Club Passim. And, I get more and more irked by ASCAP because, they have a giant office building in Manhattan and they have hundreds of lawyers on their staff. And, they're a giant organization. And rather than browbeat the low-hanging fruit, I'm sure that's how they view it, of the small folk clubs, like, guys, why don't you mount a massive class action suit against Spotify so that we get paid? Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm raising a kid and writing songs. You actually have lawyers on retainer. You have a staff. You have a board. You have, you've got all this money that you're pulling out of the large radio stations and the television networks and distributing to artists. I salute you, And yeah, you should take some of that money and hire this staff, but you have this staff go after Spotify, go after Napster. And, perhaps I am ignorant, perhaps they did, and I missed it. I don't really know. But I just don't like to see ASCAP beating up on the small venues. So that's my grumpy answer to that. Can you play your new song you wrote for your son? I've written like 4 or 5 songs for the dude. But I'm assuming you mean Hey There Little One. So I'll probably, why don't I close up with that? I'm probably going to, end this thing about 3:30 and we're about halfway there. Remind me that I said that toward the end. All right, thank you. Do, 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 do. Peter plays in Middle. Oh, yeah, this is true. I'm playing in Middleborough, Mass, with Timmy Guerin on August. I totally forgot that. You're right. Studio 84 house concerts. Man, come join us. And thank you. Yes, I appreciate it, Neil. They were at the show up in Maine when Mark and I played. Wonderful. When do you like to use a capo on a song? All the time. I mean, it kind of has to do with that thing that we were saying before. Like, do we want it to be B flat, like super dark? Or do we want it to be B, which is actually among the brighter, it's sort of a bright, cloudy sound to me. Bright black road, a ribbon in the snow. It feels right. So I do sort of move the capo around, partly, as it's sitting right in my vocal register, but also what sort of color and texture are we talking about? Any Redbird shows in the future? I mean, maybe one of these days, but it seems fairly unlikely. We all have our own projects and our own things. And, Jeffrey became very dedicated to touring with that band. And then also Jeffrey had the Cold Satellite thing. And, Goody lives down in Austin. And most of the touring he does these days is, small runs with Chris Smither. So it just seems unlikely. But you never know. As to chords having emotions, and when they're played in a certain order, the transchords complete brings satisfaction for me. JS. All right. Yeah. This is. God, I remember there was an absurd Monty Python routine where they were talking about these Shakespearean actors, and it's like, well, King Lear is a very difficult role. It has 17,045 words. Macbeth, on the other hand, only has 11,415 words, and that was it. Like, literally, they were talking about the roles as though the most important thing about the role was the quantity of words. But in the middle of it, as the famous director once said, well, now you've got all the right words and you just need to get them in the right order. And I always remembered in the middle of this sort of really childish, dumb skit, that's actually it. That's it. Just put the words and the chords in the right order. Also, subtraction is a big thing. Redbird was awesome, so thank you. Mike Peel, work the word shitbag into one of your songs. I am more profane than a whole lot. I've got that something in the way she moves. I could lose myself in the base of it, but sadly I turned on the news, and the news is Jeff Bezos went to space today. That motherfucker could have paid everyone who ever worked for him a living wage and still been rich enough to buy a rocket ship, but no. So he's an asshole in space. I love profanity. It's immensely useful. And when Trump wins in 2024, how bad could it really get? I heard someone put it very, very well. They said if Trump is reelected, this time the velociraptors will know how to use the door handles. You know, I think it's imperative that Trump not be reelected. This is how democracies end. This is exactly how the democracy in Germany ended. What you need is 1/3 of the electorate and bad faith. That's all you need. Hitler was elected with about 34% of the electorate and bad faith. And then you say a bunch of outrageous bullshit and you dismantle the norms and you erode it. You flood the zone. Flood the zone with shit. Though I'm not, it's not me saying this. That's, what's his nuts? That's his political operative who said it. Why can't I say the guy's name? Because I'm trying to forget him. So that's how the Stalinists took Germany. I mean, this is how democracies end. Any historian, man, they've been alarmed since that dude came down the escalator. Oh, thank you. This is interesting, a response. Certainly right about, I own a book and record store in Nashville. Even though there's a regulatory carve-out for stores that sell the music they play, for weeks, because I had, hang on a second. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to find your comment. Hide. There we go. They came after me relentlessly because you had artists perform in the store. What if they oh my God, I am so sorry to hear this. Yeah, this is the thing. This is Dan Baylog, and he's basically saying, he had a bookstore and record store, and he had artists come in there and perform at, like an in-store, and ASCAP went after him for that. There's no call to it. I haven't yet resigned, and in some ways I kind of can't because they're sending me a couple of grand a year, and most of what they get from is from television stations and radio stations. But, I don't even know that. I do occasionally, let the very few people I know within ASCAP, I let them know. I tell them, I disapprove of this thing you're doing, and I also say it in public. But I'm beginning to just, I don't know. I do not, Pat Buchanan said that everything starts out as a movement, and then it devolves into being a business, and then it descends into being a racket. And I think he's not wrong, like there's a part of me that wants to blow up ASCAP and BMI and CSAC. There's part of me that, certainly I feel like the Republican Party has outlived its legitimacy as a movement, and so has the Democratic Party. I was hoping for a cleaner split in both of them a long time ago, but they appear to be shambling on, and one of them is not nearly the danger to democracy at present that the other is. The Republican Party is. Anyway, good God, man, can we all just start over? You admire my authenticity. Well, I appreciate that. Can you trace the development in an artist in terms of how you dealt with the vulnerability of sharing? How have your feelings about that changed over the years? Yeah, I'm a pretty open person, and I am such by nature, but I'm okay with that, but there are pitfalls in that I think occasionally people presume then that perhaps I'm more amenable to adding friendships into my life. And, I don't take care of the friends I have well enough. Like, I tend to be a garrulous and perhaps sometimes glib person. So it's had costs in my own life in that, I'm not as good a friend as I would like to be in that regard. So I think I have become just slightly more reserved. But I also, I'll talk about fatherhood, and I'll talk sort of vaguely about my son. But there is no picture of him on the internet, and I don't plan for there to be. My wife and I don't plan for that. And my wife is a very private person. And so I keep better boundaries, I think, these days around what is and is not my story to tell. But overall, I'm glad to be open, and especially to be open about, I've suffered from depression and self-harm, and had fairly ordinary things that happen in my life that I've suffered from, and I think it's a good idea to talk about it because it doesn't cost me much, and because that's my nature, and it's been very rewarding. I've had any number of people. I think by now the total gets to be 6 or 8 or 9 people have come up to me at shows or reached out online and said that they were literally in the week where they pretty much figured they were going to commit suicide, and then they heard like some song of mine or a friend brought them to a show. And from a galloping horse, those of us, even like a moderate depressive like me, I can kind of spot a depressive, and I'm sure that somebody as terribly depressed as someone who is suicidal can easily spot in me that I have some issues that go around that. And they'll tell me that my work sort of gave them, whatever, a handhold. And this has happened to me often enough that I actually kind of have a stock response, which is to tell them, I'm really glad that my work, was whatever part it was of the immense amount of effort you must have put in just to survive. So, like, when you look at a thing like that, I mean, it's fine. It's fine if I'm open, even if that occasionally has sort of awkward and weird costs in my own life, and frankly, even if it means I sometimes let down some of my friends. I'm never going to get that entirely right, but it is what it is. So there we go. No, you're a poetry fan. You have a short list of poets to recommend. Oh my God. Oh, that's a good idea. A monthly poetry recommendation on Patreon. I should absolutely just put that into my calendar. Yeah, I'll give you the short list right now. Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver was a great American poet. And she's your go-to if what you need is sort of like immense tenderness and a sort of she loved nature in a real sense. Like, she has all these just amazing lines of, like, a nest full of little birds' eggs humming with more electricity than humming what more than all the electricity in New York City. So she was amazing in that regard. On the other hand, I would send you to Lorene Niedecker, great mid-century Wisconsin poet, if you want just sort of brutal, condensed, no bullshit sort of objectivism. She had a poem that went, a monster owl sat on the fence post and then flew away. What was it a sign of? Sign of an owl. She was a deep, heavy duty, not particularly friendly, but just stone cold beautiful artist. And then Jim Harrison and Ted Kooser, and my personal favorite among all of the poets is a guy named Tom Hennon, Hennen. Never got famous. Bunch of chapbooks. Put a chapbook out called The Heron with No Business Sense. But he recently, Copper Canyon Press put out his collected works. I believe that it's titled Darkness Sticks to Everything. And it's just, man, poetry is like literally the meat of everything I do. I just try to like read it. And the other thing I would do if I were you, Alfred, I mean, I'm happy to do a monthly poet suggestion. That's a very good idea. I should revive Poetry Hour with Mabel Dog is what I should do. But also subscribe to both Poem a Day and the Poetry Foundation. They each have a daily newsletter, and then University of Nebraska has a weekly email called American Life and Poetry. Kwame Dawes is the curator of that. That's great stuff to get it. Holly Walsh. Oh, thank you for that. All right, right. Oh, this is great. I just tuned in. Okay, maybe not. Hello. Hi, hello. Okay, I believe unless someone else has a question, I am at the end of this list. This is of actual questions. No, I did not just talk about you, or maybe I did. Oh God, Smither, wait. Brad Porter, where do you live? Isn't Smither out in Colorado at this juncture, or is he? Um, Maybe you live in Colorado. That would actually be a perfectly sensible reason as to why you happen to see Chris Smither. Oh, come on. There must be more questions. Doesn't anyone want to ask me about the tenor banjo neck that's growing out of the top of my skull? Hi, Peter. When will I be back in Ann Arbor, Michigan? That's a good question. I was there. Actually, that leads me to something I should tell you all. So I was in Ann Arbor this past, I think, February or March with Sista Strings. And so if you didn't see me there, then you missed me, and that's easy to do. If you like me, please sign up on my mailing list. If you like any artist, please sign up specifically on their email list. And the reason is that the social media companies are, they're toxic to young people, they're toxic to girls, and especially the data bears that out. And they don't show you my posts. Like, you can hit follow and you can hit like and you can hit, on and on and on. But the fact is that they're going to show you the posts that will draw the eyeballs so they can deliver your metadata that they are stealing to the corporate interests that want it. And so as a result, when I got 17,000 people who like me on this Facebook page. And the fact is that when I type, hey, I'll be in such and such, they're not going to show it to you. They're only going to show it to about 5% of you. So anyway, sign up on my mailing list and you won't miss a show. Now we have some questions. This is great. Guitar question, what strings do you use on that Dark Martin that you play? The strings I use on all my guitars, I use phosphor bronze, nano web coated elixir strings. I used to have an endorsement deal with them. I probably still do, but I kind of feel like, I don't know, strings are a big part of how guitar shops make their money. And, I got my local down here, Downtown Sounds in Northampton, the next town over. And then also I tend to, when I'm in Milwaukee, I'll just go buy some elixir strings from Wade's Guitar Shop. And I also do a lot of my online guitar shopping at Elderly Instruments. I like a coated string and I like a phosphor bronze string. So that's because I have those hands, like I just touch metal and it corrodes. I'm a guy, if I wear a silver ring, there will be black on my finger and the ring will be dull. And heaven help me if it's copper. What inspired you? What inspired you to write Stevens Green? Just curious, love that song. Yeah, so that song, I can tell you that's, I believe, one of the very first songs that Goody and I wrote together. And so the melody is his. And it came with, them. Like that was his melody. And, and then all the words kind of came coughed they coughed themselves up into those rhythmic sort of little jello molds that the melody had. And they're standing out on Stephen's Green. Stephen's Green is, the big park in the center of Dublin. And, a lot of this circles back to something earlier, like I was made into this thing that I am just a few hundred yards from Stephen's Green. And, it was a formative time in my life, and I was in college, and I was living in Ireland, and I had, the mysterious, my soulmate, who, we never actually knew each other very well. We were pen pals, but the way that stuff can just sort of merge itself into your life. So it's just a song about sort of longing and romance and sadness, sort of spilling out of a 27-year-old something to that melody. Nothing more than that. Ba-doop-doop-doo. I would love to share this with a friend. Is it going to be available after the live stream is over in recorded form? Yes, so this will stay up on my Facebook, YouTube, and my Facebook page and my profile and YouTube. It'll stay up there, I think, for about a day or a day or two. By all means, share it with a friend. Thank you. Would you ever do a cover record like the one Chris Delmhorst did, the Cars record? I mean, probably not. That is a beautiful record. She made that record of Cars tunes. Part of it is because that, the Cars are so central to her deal. And, she just loved it. And she loved it at a time when she was young. Like you only love the music that you love when you're young that way, And then the other thing is, of course, that their music is so wonderful compositionally, but it's so tied to like the 80s. And so like for her to do it and to bring her own very non-80s aesthetic to it, so that what it was laid bare was what was laid bare was the composition. Holy shit, Matt, you just reminded me. Yes, I was going to say no, I wouldn't do an all covering one artist, but I have for a long time, I have wanted to do a record of various Michael Hedges compositions, or to make a record, to remake Aerial Boundaries, which was his big central record, but to do it with sort of an avant-garde ensemble. And I don't have the technique to get at the arrangements of that, but who does is Todd Sikafus. Todd Sikafus, if he and, Edith Schneer on clarinet and Jenny Scheinman on violin, and I bet I'm certain he knows like a super hot shit vibraphone player, and maybe a great accordionist, like some sort of like small chamber ensemble, maybe a dozen people, and you go through Aerial Boundaries and you basically say, which 4 to 5 of us would most bring this particular composition to life? Like, who's going to do Rickover's Dream? Who's going to do Ragamuffin? Holy shit, man. I should just put a bug in his ear to do this, because am I going to do it? No, but I had the damn idea, and so all the riches will flow my way. I mean, that's why I got into this job in the first place. Market domination. Brad Porter is, in fact, in Boulder. That's an excellent suggestion. Sign up. Oh, thank you for signing up. That's awesome. How did the Cafe Carp become your spiritual home? It is exactly that, so I had the experience of being a busker in Dublin. Then I came home and started a band, or was part of the starting of a band called Big Sky in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it was 2 guys and me and Joe Panzetta singing and playing acoustic guitars. And we had various members in the bass player department. Dave Jansen played drums, and then Suki Wolf from the Wolf Family Band sang. Killer singer. Couldn't remember lyrics to save her life, and a great trombone player. And we became like, in maybe 1990 and 91, we became like a fairly large bar band in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We could put a couple hundred people in a room, and so I was playing bar gigs, and then the college ended, and Joe moved to Seattle, and and I was looking for like a place to play, and I happened into the Cafe Carp, and I got a gig there opening for Pat Donahue, and I didn't even know how gigs worked. Like I assumed gigs started at 10:30, like all the bar gigs that I was playing. So I showed up at like 9 for a 7:30 opening slot. But they let me play in between Pat Donahue's sets, And then I played the Cafe Carp. I've probably played there. I'm probably the person who has played the Cafe Carp the second largest number of times after Bill Camplin himself, and he owns the joint. So, and I've made, holy crap, the Redbird record was made in Fort Atkinson because Jeff Folkalt was living there. Jeff Folkalt is from Whitewater. Jeff Folkalt got into the scene kind of because he was coming to see me, and I was the guy doing the thing that he realized he wanted to do. He came through the Cafe Carp, and because it is an incredibly special place, and all that is down to Bill Camplin and Kitty Welch, the proprietors of this place. They've been running this joint, and it's just a special place, and it attracts a special group of human beings. Like the whole staff there, it's just they're wonderful. It's about community. It's about listening. It's about being present to one another, and it's distinctly Midwest. There's a sort of a salty, understated, wry humor appended to the place. And holy shit, we made the Redbird record over in Spider's apartment. But we made Redbird made that record live at the Cafe Carp, and I made Peter Mulvey with Sista Strings live at the Carp. I made that record there, and I made the studio record that's about to come out on the stage as well. So I have made 4 records either at the Carp or within spitting distance of the Carp. And it's where I came up with the Lamplighter sessions, which at first was just an in the round thing, It's just, that's it. Like, to me, it's like, Passim is sort of the East Coast version of the Cafe Carp in a major metropolitan area, so that there are 1,000 people like me that view it as home, whereas there might only be, couple dozen people that really sort of view the Cafe Carp as like, that's the center of my damn deal, and I'm among them. It's because it's in a little town in Wisconsin. Well, I'm back to Colorado anytime. I will be. Oh, we have a question about the strings again, light, medium. So if I'm tuning down a whole step, I'll use medium gauge, and if I'm at pitch, I'll use light gauge. That's my rule of thumb. How did you get connected with Sista Strings? They are fantastic. So we're Milwaukeeans. They were playing in my brother's Unitarian church, and I met them there. And then they were the string section for Mike Mangione. The two of them were the string players for Mike Mangione when he opened a show for me at a venue in Sheboygan called Paradigm Coffee and Music, and I just stole them. They are the two most talented human beings I think I have ever met. They are extraordinary. Shanti and Monique Ross. They are the youngest of 5 children, homeschooled by their parents, who were extraordinary people in their own right, are extraordinary people in their own right. They homeschooled Shanti and Monique. They supported them and turned them into the deeply caring, passionate, sort of incredibly kind and energetic young human beings that they are. I believe they're 33 and 31. And, they're unbelievably good improvisers, and they're fun. Most classical players that are as technically skilled as they are just don't have the leftover time and bandwidth to also be great improvisers, great singers, great writers, great improvisers. I've never met people that sort of tick that many boxes. And of course, I stole them from Mike Mangione, and Allison Russell stole them from me, and Brandy Carlisle stole them from Allison Russell. But honestly, they still play with me. I can't afford them, but I just pay them what I can afford, and they play with me because they're that kind. I mean, that's what I would do. I think I like to think I would be that stand up. Like they still play with Allison, even though Brandy pays them more, and they still play with me, even though Brandy and Allison pay them more. Like you do these things for love, and there is no limit for them, man. My God, check them out. Just go follow them, and go follow the artists that they are playing with. They're going to be major. And next month, I got a record coming out called Peter Mulvey with Sista Strings. Love is the only thing. Oh, this is great. I got someone to order a book of poems. That's a big thing in American poetry. I bet you're the only American, I bet you're the only human on this earth that ordered a Tom Hennon book today. Thank you for so doing. Would you share what False Indigo is about? Divorce. When I was getting divorced 5 years ago, I was living in Fort Atkinson, and the cook at the Cafe Carp, Dennis, he has been walking for maybe 20 years in a wildlife park called the Dorothy Karnes County Park. And he knows every animal in it. He knows, how the lake there, the pond there responds to weather, when it will begin to break up. He's just an extraordinary naturalist. He doesn't, he just observes all this stuff. He shared it with me because we were going on walks together. So false indigo is a plant that grows in the Midwest in the old oak savannas that resembles indigo. But it does not, in fact, turn you can't make it into purple dye. And so the Europeans called it false indigo. And I thought that was just a spectacular name for anything. And, there are only 3 other lines in that song: right as rain and right you are, false indigo. I'll be wrong this one last time, false indigo. And beware the role of a lifetime, false indigo. Like all of those are straight up divorce thoughts. Faintly bitter and could be aimed inward or outward. Second the comment. I will be back to Colorado. Again, I think I'm really going to mostly focus on the Midwest and the Northeast for really the first couple of years of my son's life, But I will be back to all of these places, the minute he gets into sort of a more regular, preschool sort of situation. I will spread things out. Thanks, Peter. I can hear Goody and Stevens Green melody. Yeah, oh my God, that is a straight up David Goodrich melody. My God. But a fun fact, first time I saw. Ha! That's hilarious. Yeah, you know what? If you saw Michael Hedges in Milwaukee, which I bet you did, Mr. Ringstad, I was at that show. The guy only played Milwaukee, as far as I know, maybe 4 times in his life. And I believe I saw him 3 of those, Michigan. All right. I believe that I have gotten through now. So if there is 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'm going to sing the request. And thank you all. And, thank you for being patrons. My God, I would not have survived the pandemic, especially. Okay. I did not see Michael Hedges up in Eau Claire. Gotcha. I would not have survived without you. And so, there are 47 of you on here at this particular moment, and you basically got my family through the pandemic. I mean, obviously the pandemic is still happening and we're still somewhat curtailed. I just got COVID a couple of weeks ago, and I just got COVID 3 weeks ago, and it was awful. And my son caught it, which was alarming. But he did fine, and hopefully we're going to do fine with after effects. But it cost me yet another weekend of touring. And when that happens to me, it's not like I'm on a salary or anything. So I have to thank you for that. If you happen not to be a patron, you can become one for whatever, $3 a month. You can do that with many artists. Honestly, like I am a patron on a lot of other artists' Patreon pages because I'm doing pretty good, and because I feel like we all at this point need to build what our government has dismantled, which is a social safety net. I still believe that it's best when it is simply done from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, as Karl Marx would have put it. That is damn near scripture. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? But unfortunately, the Communist Manifesto, when you put it into practice, it pretty much performs like any piece of scripture. When you try to base a government on it, it gets a little hairy. Oh my God, I played on Washington Island once before. Again, I played with Katie Dahl, who is a Door County fixture. I played at the Washington Island Arts Center. I have been to Washington Island so many times because my family used to bring all of us little critters up there to go camping on Rock Island. So we would, and also, I'm just known for trivia. There is a bar on Washington Island which stayed open all the way through Prohibition by serving Angostura bitters. You could get a shot of bitters, which is vodka with a bunch of spices in it, but it was medicine, and it wasn't a public house. It was a health club, wherein you joined this health club in order to partake of vodka. But I was there, and I drank a shot of bitters and got my little card-carrying membership in the club the last time I was on Washington Island. And have myself now taken to a cocktail now and again that I call the Vermont Trinidad Sour. So a Trinidad Sour is an ounce of Angostura bitters, an ounce of rye whiskey, a little bit of lemon juice, and then a sweetener that's a nut they have in the Caribbean. But I don't have that syrup, so I just put a little maple syrup in there. Thank you, everyone. This event was great. I appreciate it. I've had a marvelous time as well. I really have. Whatever I can do for you to thank you for your patronage, So I assume this is the dad song that you meant. It's called Hey There Little One. And I was real happy when this song popped out. I think it's going to be front and center on the next record. After the one that's coming out next month. I kind of have the next record written if I needed to record it, but I have a feeling there might be a whole bunch more dad songs. This is very much a Papa song. And it's got all the things in it. It's got sort of God, but the sort of God of the Greek mythology, the one that, is a pretty angry one. Watch out for that God. And then it's got like God as the life urge. And then it's got sort of the classic Peter Mulvey move where you zoom the camera way the hell back and talk in very broad terms. I want to send this performance out to all of you, and when I originally put this song up on Facebook, one woman commented, "I don't get it." And I almost waded in to sort of say all of what I just said now, and I was like, I don't know, okay, that's cool, that's fine. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Hey there, little one, your mama stole fire for you. Just like her papa stole it for her, it's a thing that the grown-ups do. And the funny thing is, after all that, you still gotta steal it for yourself as well. And then God finds out and he chains you to the mountain, and boy, don't it hurt like hell. And hey there, little one, you see God coming, you better run. Ain't that the way that it always was? I remember I was 9 years old at a campsite by the water. Somehow I ended up running through the woods with the neighbor's teenage daughter. And her hand was warm and her legs were long, and they were pale by the light of the moon. And I guess I had what you might call a premonition of a big wave coming up to hit me real soon. Hey there, little one, see God coming, take her hand and run. Ain't that the way that it always was? Yeah. And when I talk about it, I can't talk about it. And when you talk about it, you just can't talk about it. So let's not talk about it. Okay, let's talk about it. The empires rise, the meteor falls, and the lawnmower blows a gasket. And true love runs its crooked course, and this all ends up in a casket. And you never quite knew what it was that you wanted, but you knew that you wanted it bad. And you never really knew if you ever really had it till you lost what you never really knew you ever had. And hey there, little one, ain't nothing new under the sun. Ain't that the way that it always was, bunny bun? Way that it always was, bunny bun, bun, bunny bun. Who is a bunny who's a bun, 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 bun? Who is a bunny who's a bun, 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 bun? Bunny bun, 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 bun. Bunny bun, 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 bun. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I want to do something that I would not ever think to do at a gig, but this is a weird way to perform in that you got this camera on you, but check this out. Can it be seen? Do. No. Okay. Somewhere in here or there, if you happen to be me, and so you see yourself, you see your throat in the mirror a lot. Most days, I happen to notice there's this little, you can see my pulse just going to-doop, to-doop. You know, I don't know what that is. Well, it's probably my carotid artery. But, this is the only time in my life that I'm ever going to go, that's where that line came from. Where the fragile pulse of living fluttered in your throat. That's what the fuck I was talking about. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd for a detail. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for supporting my nerddom. I appreciate you. Take care. Be good. See you down the road. I'm going to hit the end stream button. You know that thing in Zoom where you're like, okay, bye, everybody, and then you hit, end, but you didn't realize, even though you've done it 80 times, that you also have to hit, do you really want to? And so you're just